Hello, travelers. My name is Thomas the Human Bard, and I'm joined by...
Mercy the Tiefling Wizard.
And Onog the Half-Orc Barbarian.
And we are off on a... side quest. Side quest!
I really wish you wouldn't take us so far out into the woods before telling me this.
The key is I have to get you on the side quest before I tell you it's a side quest, or else you'll let me know that it's not important to your own character development. So, on today's side quest, we are going to be discussing Unearthed Arcana 2020 Feats. The newest Unearthed Arcana from Wizards of the Coast. We have skipped a few, but we will probably end up going back and talking about those at some point. This one really caught my eye, though, and I know it's been getting a lot of attention in the community recently because it just came out the other day. So we want to strike while the Unearthed Arcana is hot.
While the feet are toasty.
Strike while the feet are hot.
I'm remembering why we don't bring you on these.
And talk about these new feat options for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So, let's start with a basic comprehension of feats. Onog, tell us a little bit about what feats are and how they're useful in the game.
Well, feats are technically an optional rule in the player's handbook of basically every 4th level for most player classes. Some of them have different ones, including rogues and fighters. But usually about every 4th level, you either have the opportunity to increase your ability scores, or you could alternatively take a feat, which some of them increase your ability scores as well, but also give you some kind of benefit. So a good example of feat is the sharpshooter feat, where when you make a ranged attack, you can choose to incur a -5 accuracy penalty to your attack roll, and if your attack does hit, it increases the damage dealt by 10, kind of a thing. So it gives you different specializations. It lets you either focus or customize your characters in a way that simply multi-classing wouldn't let you, kind of a thing.
Definitely.
Lets you create an artisanal, bespoke, one-of-a-kind handmade character build.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, yes. Artisanal.
Anyway, link to my Etsy shop down below.
Yes, where I sell my artisanal handmade D&D builds.
Yeah.
Yes. That's just called a DM's Guild or Drive Thru RPG. So we were actually just discussing, Mercy and I were discussing earlier, how feats are kind of interesting, where a lot of people will read through them and come up with a character idea based off of having that feat. Mm-hmm. But really, feats benefit you the most. Well, not benefit you the most, but feats are most often taken kind of mid to late character progression, because your first couple of ability score increases
you want to
really
be juicing
important.
up your stats.
Yeah.
You're so desperate.
And so you really want to be finishing out your, bumping your charisma up or whatever it is, your dexterity up. And so that's very important to you. But a lot of people, the whole character build is based around, and then at 14th level, I'll finally take this feat or whatever it is. And it's interesting to me that that happens. And there's variant rules, especially with the variant human race option, where you start with one feat of your choice. And there's even an option, I believe, suggested as a variant rule of just let everyone start with a feat of their choice. If that's
not. I don't think that's an official variant rule, but that tends to be what I've heard. Along the grapevine, what a lot of dungeon masters end up doing is so that no one really feels left out, and they don't run into that conundrum of, but my stats are bad, I need to get better, versus taking a feat.
Yeah, and with what Mercy had referenced, like having a feat that early on can really define a character into a niche. Some people play where they want their character to be defined over time by the game, and others want to have a character they've already decided on kind of flourish in the game, but have it already available to them. So let's start discussing these feats. There's a few of them available. A few built off of the kind of framework of currently existing feats, and some that are interesting due to their creativity. So the first one is a great example. There is a feat called just Magic Initiate, I believe, Spellcasting Initiate, something like that. This first feat is Artificer Initiate. You've learned some of an artificer's inventiveness, granting you the following benefits. You learn one cantrip of your choice from the Artificer spell list, and you learn one first-level spell of your choice from that list. Intelligence is your spellcasting ability for these spells. Whenever you gain a level, you can replace one of these spells with another spell of the same level from the Artificer spell list. You can cast this first-level spell without a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can cast it in this way. Again, you can also cast the spell using any spell slots you have. You gain proficiency with one type of artisan's tools of your choice, and you can use that type of tool as a spellcasting focus for any spell you cast that uses intelligence as its spellcasting ability.
I like that because it's just a little bit of flavor.
You can just use a wrench if you're a wizard, but not if you're a sorcerer.
What that immediately made me imagine was if you were playing like a wizard based on like Winry from Full Metal Alchemist with just her giant wrench that appears out of nowhere, using it as like a magic wand. That's kind of great.
Well, the Artificer... The Artificer is a class that's been officially added to the game. The first real, like, new class that's been added. But it was added in an expansion book. It was added in Eberron for the first time, really officially, I believe. Rise of the War? What's the Eberron book's title?
No, oh God, goodness, I don't remember.
The official Eberron release, Eberron Rising from the Last War, which added a new class option, the Artificer, which is an intelligence-based caster that also does some interesting stuff with, like, constructs. So this allows you to basically, even if you're not an Artificer, get a little bit of an Artificer as a feat.
like an Artificer.
A little Artificer as a snack. Yeah. A couple of these feats, you'll notice a trend of doing that, where instead of multi-classing into Artificer, maybe I really just want to take this feat and keep my class progression for the class I'm on. I think it's useful, and I think as we go through some of the other ones, it can allow you to get the vibe you're going for without having to take an entire level or like feeling like you're required to dip into another class to get where you want to go.
My interesting the thing that's drawing my attention on this is the wording on like you can pick a spell from the artificial spell list or artificer spell list. From what I understand,
constructed spell list.
Yeah. Well, from what I understand, isn't the artificer spell list just like the wizard spell list?
The wizard spell. I'm not sure. It may be missing some.
Like
it may not.
Well,
have
that's
every
the thing.
wizard
Is like,
spell.
are there any spells on the artificer spell list that the wizard
that are
doesn't
unique?
Have access to? Like if your cantrip and the first level spell you want to pick. Also, like if you were going to take, magic initiate for wizard, if the first level spell and the cantrip you wanted to pick also happen to be on the artificer spell list, then this just ends up being a strictly better version of wizard initiate kind of a thing. So it's just something to note where it's if your scope of what you wanted to pick from that is already limited to this, well this way you get a free skill in artisan's tools and a cheap to find focus kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think this one might be interesting, especially for non-wizard intelligence casters, which are like arcane tricksters and
that's also
Eldritch Knights.
Yeah, anything that gives you more abilities to cast on third casters, which are what arcane tricksters and Eldritch Knights are. Anything that gives you more spells is access to more utility and or the ability to cast things more times is always going to be good.
Definitely. All right, this next one is one of the more creative ones, and it's probably my personal favorite on here. The Chef feat. Time and effort spent mastering the culinary arts has paid off. You gain the following benefits. Increase your Constitution or Wisdom score by 1 to a maximum of 20. So this gives you half of an ASI, but it is a specific one, so that means it's not as hard of a blow to your character progression. You gain proficiency with cook's utensils, if you don't already have it. As part of a short rest, you can cook special food.
Nice.
I like that it's not like they didn't come up with a new word. They didn't like feastly food or it's just special food.
It's nice food.
What makes it special? Don't ask. Provided you have ingredients and cook's utensils on hand, you can prepare enough of this food for a number of creatures equal to 4 plus your proficiency bonus.
Okay.
At the end of the short rest, any creature who eats the food, the special food, and spends 1 or more hit dice to regain hit points, regains an extra 1d8 hit points.
Nice.
Almost like the Song of
Rest.
Song of Rest from the Bard. Yeah. With 1 hour of work, or when you finish a long rest, you can cook a number of treats equal to your proficiency bonus. These special treats last 8 hours after being made. A creature can use a bonus action to eat one of these treats to gain temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus.
Okay.
I wish that one was a little stronger because your proficiency bonus isn't a ton.
It's not much. It's like 2 or 3.
By the time
But-
it's anything significant, you're working with big enough hit point numbers that it is no longer significant.
But temp HP is useful.
But that's the thing. That extra little barrier, even if it's small, is something. It's always something.
Yeah. I've always, when we first
Especially
started
when
playing
it's
D&D,
basically free. Like,
yeah.
This has
a
like
bonus
timing
action.
restrictions, but it doesn't really have like material requirements. It's
No.
just food.
There's no specific gold cost associated with the food that you have to have access to. It could be bad quality food as long
But
as your
you make
DM
it
rules it
better.
as food.
it's just like the mom in Kill la Kill who's like serving them like fish bones and trash, and
Yeah.
it's the best thing they've ever eaten.
I was gonna say it matters what your DM defines as food, and then lizard folk barbarian entered the chat.
Now,
I
you go ahead, Mercy.
I was just gonna say that, it's one of those things with feats where you always think about like, but would I take it instead of
Getting 2 points.
getting 2
'Cause you're
points?
getting
And
1
even though you
point.
do get the 1 point, I just wish that last bit was a little bit stronger because I kind of feel like it would be underwhelming to use.
But if I have a number of treats equal to my proficiency bonus, so let's say 3.
Can I give you 3?
I can eat all 3 in a row. I mean,
then that's more
temporary hit
significant,
points
sure.
don't stack,
But-
but if I get damaged, I can gain them back basically.
And you can eat
right?
these as a
Right.
bonus action, right?
Yeah, a bonus action. Any turn,
That's
you can
true.
make an attack and eat a snack.
Yeah.
That's
So
what I
this
like.
is
Yeah, you're right.
This is like mid-combat Goodberry right
Chomp.
here.
Yeah, mid-combat Goodberry is not a bad way to think about it.
Well, you could can someone who is unconscious eat one of these
Can
to
you
be stabilized?
feed it to someone as a bonus?
Can-
Probably not.
I would
Because,
I
I
would
mean-
require that some chewing might take place. In my
That's the
guess.
thing that I always think about with like
What if
healing
I
potions
Mama
and
Bird
stuff,
it?
like pouring it down someone's throat. I'm like, that isn't really how swallowing works.
Yeah. If I chew it beforehand and regurgitate it into my unconscious friend's mouth.
What if
maybe.
I'm proficient in IV toolkits
IV drip?
and I just intravenously introduce this special treat?
Now, I do find this interesting because this is a return, because they already made a chef feat for Unearthed Arcana a while back, like a couple years now at this point, where they just ran through all of the tools and then made a feat around each of those tools. So I wonder how many more of these. I haven't taken a look at all of these. I wonder how many more of these are retooling, literally, of like the artisan tool feats that we had gotten before.
Yeah.
Yeah, there aren't in this set. There's not a lot, but there are some that you'll notice that they have themes to them. But the tools one, not really. Not so
Well,
much.
and then in that case,
there's a few of them.
In that case, it's very interesting that this is the one out of that whole tool set that kind of stuck.
I'd be curious how it differs from the previous one.
The
We do
other
also
one,
get
I think it
poisoners
was
tools later. So
I can't remember, but it didn't have like the you can make little snacks. It was basically you can make breakfast, and breakfast is super rad, and it like gives everyone like a bonus to Constitution saves or something, like something
like
random.
a nerfed heroes feast.
Yeah, basically like a mini heroes feast that
Yeah.
only did physical things, not mental things.
if I am a weed domain cleric,
No.
can I
Yes.
put my weed into these special treats and then also get the bonuses of my weed?
Why not?
Perhaps. We'll see once Wizards finally puts out their official weed domain. We'll see how they end up. All right, the Crusher feat. This one I was confused about until I saw that later there is a Piercer and a Slasher feat. And then it makes much more sense.
Yeah.
Because I was like, what is this? but they're all for the damage, the physical damage types. You are practiced in the art of crushing your enemies.
Oh boy.
Granting you the following benefits. Increase your strength or dexterity by 1 to a maximum of 20. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals bludgeoning damage, you can move it 5 feet to an unoccupied space, provided the target is no more than one size larger than you. When you score a critical hit that deals bludgeoning damage to a creature, attack rolls against that creature are made with advantage until the end of your next turn. Everyone's attack rolls, not just yours.
Wow.
Attack rolls against the creature. So if you crit on them with your crushing ability, your whole team now has advantage as you basically like crush their rib cage or knock the wind out.
If you pair this with critting on a 19 or a 20,
not bad.
that's rad.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad for a crit fisher build.
Whenever you deal bludgeoning damage,
You just
you
knock
can
them
move
around.
them 5 feet.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
That's actually very powerful. They don't have to make a save. Just you succeeded
there's
in
no
your
save.
hit. You push them.
You get them 5 feet. It's once per turn, so you can't multi-attack, like push them 30 feet or whatever. But it's
You
still
could
sweet.
do some useful stuff about, pushing them into melee range with
Or out of
melee range of other people.
Yeah.
Or, to get sneak attack bonuses for your rogue or manipulate
Or-
the battlefield like that.
To push them in the lava.
Push them off the cliff.
There's no like athletics check. Like they just get shoved.
I always get excited when there's a spell or an ability that doesn't require
Yeah.
a save.
I'm like, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Let them have it.
Now,
There is the requirement of the sizing. They can't be too much bigger. You can't hit a Tarrasque 5 feet on every turn. But
that would be.
Well, that's not
funny.
very anime of wizards.
it's not very anime of you. Not very cash money. But if you're a medium creature, as most player characters are, large is the biggest you can get
Right.
with this ability. So once they become huge or whatever.
This does also seem to be a callback to I think it's that same set I was talking about that had Chef, or around that same time, because they were releasing specific feats for like weapon types, and so this seems to be like a kind of a, because the other one was it was like if you're fighting with maces or mauls or something like that, then when you're attacking you can like use the weapon to lower the enemy's shield, and if they have a shield then your allies can attack them but as though they didn't have a shield, it's, and so it was like super complicated.
Yeah.
And this seems to be not, I don't want to say watered down because that has its own connotations, but this is like a much more streamlined, simplified concept for
Pared
I do
down,
crush damage, you go owie kind of a thing, as opposed to like the more complicated tactics they were trying to imply, get people to implement, which I actually kind of think does have a place in Feats, but
Sure.
yeah, this is a much more user-friendly side of things. Mm-hmm. What's really interesting to me, though, about this feat is that it increases strength or dexterity, and I cannot think of a single bludgeoning weapon that uses dexterity naturally.
Huh.
Like, unless the only scenario I can think of is a monk with a staff, with
Yeah,
a quarterstaff.
quarterstaff.
That is the
Can you
only
use it?
scenario in
Okay.
which dexterity is used for bludgeoning weapons.
Yeah.
What about your hands as a monk?
I guess, but so then we get into the issue of your hands are unarmed attacks and not weapons, but they're not also not weapons.
But this doesn't say
With a weapon attack, yeah.
It just says when you deal
I
bludgeoning
think
damage.
Oh,
it
okay.
wouldn't surprise me
Period.
if the inclusion of dexterity is specifically for
Technically,
monks.
if you had a spell that dealt bludgeoning damage, it would trigger off of this.
Oh,
Oh no, it says with an attack
Yeah.
that deals. No, it wouldn't. See, I lied.
Yeah.
With an attack that deals bludgeoning damage. Interesting.
When you make a spell attack, because you do make a spell attack roll sometimes.
the only ones that I can think of off the top of my head the only spells that deal bludgeoning damage are all saves. I don't think
Right.
there is a specific attack roll
Unless
that does damage.
I'm an Order of
That
Scribes
does bludgeoning
wizard, and I've changed my fireball
to do
deal
bludgeoning damage.
Bludgeon ball.
That's actually
I think if you have
not
to
bad.
roll a spell attack, that would count as making an attack,
yeah.
We'll talk
right?
about it
I think that
later.
counts as
Yeah.
attack, but that's neither here nor there. We'd have to find that.
Yeah. That's a bit too finicky for us on this episode. The next one is Eldritch Adapt. So, similar to Artificer, Why is that one so hard to say? Artificer Initiate. Artificer Initiate.
Yeah.
Eldritch Adapt lets you dip into Warlock a tiny bit. The prerequisite is that you have to have a spellcasting or pact magic feature.
Okay.
So you have to either already be a Warlock or be able to cast spells already through some means. Studying occult lore, you have unlocked Eldritch power within yourself. You learn one Eldritch invocation option of your choice from the Warlock class.
Ooh.
If the invocation has a prerequisite, you can choose that invocation only if you are a Warlock and only if you meet the prerequisite. Whenever you gain a level, you can replace the invocation with another one from the Warlock class. So as a Warlock, this just gives you one extra Eldritch invocation, like for freezies. Well, not really you're using a,
you're making a choice, but yeah.
Yeah, but as a wizard, I can just get one as long as it doesn't say, like, prerequisite Pact of the Chain feature or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right. You can just gain proficiency in deception and persuasion.
Yeah.
Just right there.
There's a lot of good Eldritch invocations that don't have prerequisites.
Yeah, like
there's a lot of funky expanded list
like
ones
At
that are
Will
really
Disguise Self, Devil's Sight, all very good stuff that suddenly, like that... A lot of the invocations are like the reason people multi-class into Warlock half the time if you're not just being a Pact of the Blade. But
there's the one with like you can read all written languages.
Yeah, there's a lot of very good utility things in the Warlock, and if your wizard's just like, I hate spending a spell slot for comprehend languages, now I don't need to,
Now it does not require. So this also, though, is the first one where I think we have to touch on one of the responses I've seen about this feat, Unearthed Arcana, is if I can start getting other people's class features by feats, does that step on other classes being unique? And does that start stealing a bit of the spotlight from other classes? If I can get a benefit from being a Warlock without being a Warlock, does the Warlock in my group go, hey, well, that was sort of my thing? I think that's up in the air. I think that there's ways to argue for both of it, and as we go on, we'll see some others that I think suffer more in that regard, and some that suffer less.
For this particular one, I don't see it that much of an issue because it also still benefits the Warlock. So the answer to, well, what's the point of being a Warlock is like, well, now I can be even more of a Warlock than I already was, kind of a thing.
Definitely.
But but that's a good point to bring up, and that's one of the things that has been plaguing the Ranger versus Druid dichotomy for
we'll talk about the Ranger later.
Multiple decades, is that they're just sort of doing the same thing, but one of them is better at it.
There is a feat in this document that is basically the entire Ranger class, but as a feat.
Oh, no.
Oh, my God.
Wait, no.
Not really, but we'll get there. We'll talk about it. Okay, Fae Touched. Your exposure to the Feywild, or one of its denizens, has left a magical mark on you. Magical mark on you. You gain the following benefits. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You learn the Misty Step spell and one first-level spell of your choice. The first-level spell must be from the Divination or Enchantment School of Magic. You can cast each of these spells without expending a spell slot. Once you cast either of these spells in this way, you can't cast that spell in this way again until you finish a long rest. You can also cast these spells using spell slots you have of the appropriate level. The spell's spellcasting ability is the ability increased by this feat. The spell's spell ability is the ability the spell's ability spells.
Yeah, that's quite a sentence.
Yeah.
So this
lets you kind of dive in a weird way. Instead of being like a class feature, this is like a racial feature. You can just kind of go steal from
from the elves. It was like an elf specific
or elves.
I think it's like, I don't know if it's high elf specific feat, but it's
high elves just get a cantrip.
But
they have the feat later. The
feat in Xanathar's guide is this was a specific racial feat for only elves, and I think it was only for high elves, and so now you get kind of like a worse but also better version.
Yeah, you get a slightly altered version of it as a feat for just anyone.
Because it's not, because the other the Fey teleportation one is you get Misty Step and can use it on a short rest. This one is you get Misty Step and something else and can use them on long rests, but if you also have spell slots, then
you can use
them to cast these spells because you basically know them.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if maybe Wizards take some more of those racial feats and kind of adapt them to be general feats that aren't tied to a specific race with everything going on with race and D&D right now.
Yeah, with their adjustment to the concept of race.
Maybe doubling down in that Xanathar section in hindsight.
Yeah, we'll see how
Was it the way to go?
The thing that I immediately thought about with this feat was what we talked about with the dichotomy of you want feats early, but you want feats late. This is a feat that makes a lot of sense to have early in the game because you say, my character was like this before they started adventuring. They've got some innate connection to the Feywild. But I also think there's an interesting place where this, if your adventure goes to the Feywild, for you to then say, why can't I just get this now?
I would
DM, slide me this feat for free. You know what I mean?
I would love to see more of that happening in D&D games where you get feats almost as like a reward from the DM.
Loot drop?
Yeah, as a loot drop.
Yeah, I mean, that happened in one of our campaigns where we had just a lot of downtime. And so, when I trained, I was a barbarian, but I trained with this, like, High King Paladin's, like, honor guard or something because we had, like, months of downtime or something like that. And I was granted the Sentinel feat as, like, an example of my training. Kind of. That's not a bad idea, is to sometimes, not always, but sometimes use like feats as a reward.
And like Thomas, you just did that with the character who made a really interesting choice, and you were like, well, you've looked into the eyes of Cthulhu, so that's going to change it a little bit.
I offered them a feat at the option of also some roleplay consequences for them as a player. Yeah.
I think that's really fun.
Yeah. I really like that a lot, and I think I almost wish there were a bit more built-in guidelines on how to appropriately do that, because the immediate thing that comes up is people go, well, how do I balance it? How do I know which feats to give and when? All that kind of stuff.
Well, and if only some of the players are getting them and some of them aren't.
Whereas, like, with a magic item, they all technically have their rarity, they have whether or not they're, like, wondrous.
They have like, the price range that they would fall in, which are vast.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of ways to judge, like, is the party ready for this kind of magic item? Or if I roll a random loot drop, could this magic item be included? If it's in that level of loot table, know it could be. I wish there was a bit more guidelines on stuff like that for feats, where you can, as the DM, know a bit more about when it's appropriate to offer these things. Because you always just, you're the DM, you can do whatever you want. You can offer these things when you feel like they're appropriate, but it might be worthwhile to the players to have them in maybe tables where they organize them by, these are ones that are martially based, these are ones that are planar based, these are ones that are this. So it's like when you go to the Feywild, how am I supposed to just remember that Faerie Touch is a feat other than having memorized all of the feats?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. All right, the next one is Fighting Initiate, similar to the Warlock. What was it called? The Eldritch Adept. Fighting Initiate, prerequisite, proficiency with a martial weapon. Your martial training has helped you develop a particular style of fighting. As a result, you learn one fighting style option of your choice from the fighter class. If you already have a style, the one you choose must be different. You can't stack them. It's against the law.
Defense.
Whenever you gain a level, you can replace this feat's fighting style with another one from the fighter class that you don't have. So as a fighter, we talked about this with the Warlock. As a fighter, I just get another fighting style. Sweet.
That would be great.
4 of them.
I have a character who that would be really helpful with.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Now, while a few of them can cross mingle, the interesting thing about this one compared to how the Warlock works is that most fighting styles don't synergize with each other, because it's either you chose this fighting style because that's the fighting style you use. So taking great-handed, great weapon master and dual wielding are never going to synergize. you're
Right.
going to have more options available to you depending on what equipment is available, kind of a thing. So if you've just got 2 short swords, you can go to town on that. Or if you've got a maul, you can go to town on that. Like, you can switch interchangeably and you're just as efficient, kind of a thing. But there's only so many fighting styles that actually synergize with each other.
Yeah. Specifically, the defense one, where just like your armor is better. You just get a bonus series.
More like 9 times out of 10, I bet you, the fighting initiate fighting style you choose is going to be defense. All martial classes have fighting styles. It's just some of them have different fighting styles available to them. So, like, for instance, paladins don't have dual wielder. And so there's a scenario in where you can customize your particular martial class and make them more unique than they normally would have been in this scenario. So you can have that dual wielding paladin with all the benefits of dual wielding with this feat.
That's true.
The other class I think this is good for is the Kensei monk, because they gain proficiency in martial weapons, and now instead of like having to multi-class into fighter to gain some benefits, now they just have to take this little feat, and now they can be your like light fighter kind of a thing.
That's cool. Yeah.
That is really cool. All right, the next one is gunner. You have a quick hand. Sorry. You have a quick hand and keen eye when employing firearms, granting you the following benefits. Increase your dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency with firearms. See firearms in the DMG. You ignore the loading property of firearms. Being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged attack rolls.
Yeah.
You're a gunslinger now. You stand next to them with a pistol.
Boom, boom, boom.
You've yeed your last hawk.
Yeah.
Now this is
great.
This is interesting because this is basically just a more specific crossbow expert feat, which is already a feat, and actually I think technically, with the exception of this feat grants you proficiency in firearms, which no other feat does at the time. The crossbow expert, if you have somehow otherwise gained proficiency in firearms, if you take crossbow expert, it's actually a better feat because all of the things that crossbow expert says also apply to all ranged weapons because of how it's worded. So you can take gunner, and now if you shoot a longbow within 5 feet, it doesn't impose disadvantage because you are a good gunslinger. And that's one of the weird things. And the same thing happens with crossbow expert. I take crossbow expert, and now if I shoot someone with a short bow, it doesn't matter. I can just shoot them from whatever range. Kind of a thing.
The one that I'm looking at here for crossbow expert, it does say the loading quality of crossbows with which you are proficient.
But
so the loading for firearms is still
relevant then.
Yeah, lets you get a couple of those quick 6-shooter shots off on your turn without having to wait till your next turn.
Well, theoretically, if you had a 6-shooter, you wouldn't. That's not a loading property. That's an ammunition property, but that's different. We can talk about that later.
Meta Magic Adept. Prerequisite: spellcasting or pact magic feature. You've learned how to exert your will on your spells to alter how they function. You gain the following benefits. Have we just invalidated the entire sorcerer class? Possibly.
Just a little
You
bit.
learn 2 meta magic options of your choice from the sorcerer class. You can use only 1 meta magic option on a spell when you cast it unless the option says otherwise. Whenever you gain a level, you can replace one of your meta magic options with another one from the sorcerer class. You gain 2 sorcery points to spend on meta magic. These points are added to any sorcery points you have from any other source, but can be used only on meta magic. You regain all spent sorcery points when you finish a long rest. So this is where we start talking about how much of a class can you give someone else until you go, well, then why would I even be a sorcerer anymore when I can just be a wizard who can now do meta magic?
Yeah.
Is that not just better in almost every way?
Yeah. Well, the issue with that is certain meta magics require more than 2 points.
More than 2.
So
that's fair.
Depending on your choices,
limiting.
this is actually a useless feat. If you don't pay
choose
attention.
ones you can't use.
Yeah, because there are certain meta magics that require, no matter how much, no matter what you're doing with it, that will require like 3 sorcery points at all times. So those are just dead in the water for this, unless you are a sorcerer and you're taking this feat to increase your own meta magic potency, which, in all honesty, is the fact that this gives you 2 meta magic options. As someone who one of their favorite characters that they play is a sorcerer, this is incredibly insulting. Because the meta magic feature itself that you get at like level 2 or 3 or whatever also only gives 2 meta magic options, and you don't gain another one for like another 7 levels. So the fact that I could take this feat at level 4 and now I have twice as many meta magics as any other sorcerer ever at that level, it's kind of like this should only give you 1 meta magic. Like,
I think
like that's my biggest thing as from a sorcerer point of view, or sorcerers should get meta magic more often. Wizards,
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things is that you can change whenever you level up the meta magic you chose, which is
that's
not
the other
in the sorcerer class options.
I don't think you can
you get
change
stuck.
it.
No, you're stuck with them forever.
I think it's becoming more popular to
allow
let
modularity.
players change class decisions that they made on a level up, which I like.
If you go, actually that was not useful.
And I think that Wizards is on that train too, heading
Well,
more
'cause
that
it's-
the
way.
whole class feature variance.
Exactly.
It's that same.
Yeah.
It's that same thing
Yeah.
I just mentioned about this feat, just in general, where it's like if you chose the meta magic that requires 3 sorcery points at level 2, well, guess how many sorcery points you have at level 2? You only have 2,
Right.
so you can't even use one of your functions. And technically, rules as written, you can't change your mind or go, "Oops, I didn't read that part." Like, of course, any halfway decent DM is going to let you go, "Oh yeah, I'll let you switch it out, but read it better next time." But rules as written, you're stuck with that option until you level, until you go and level up.
Heightened spell is the one that it requires 3 sorcery points. So don't pick that.
Don't pick heightened spell at level 2.
Yeah.
I feel like specifically among caster classes, there's already a lot of room to feel like you're stepping on each other and didn't realize.
Sure.
At this point, when I play and I'm leveling up, I will often ask the other people who are playing in the party with me, like, hey, does anybody else already have this spell? Because I don't want to take it if both of you also already have Cure Wounds. Because then you feel kind of useless, or you feel like, oh, I shouldn't cast that because I should let the bard do that because that's more their thing. Yeah. But I do have that spell, so now I just feel like I wasted a spell that I learned. And so I feel like that is a place that already like needs improvement in general in D&D, and then with things like this that let you fully take off, like I almost feel like it should say prerequisite, like be a sorcerer or something,
And
like
this
make
just
them
makes you
class specific,
the most powerful sorcerer that ever was.
Yeah. But the whole point of this one is that you don't have to.
Right. But I'm saying, like, I feel like if we're worried about feeling like we're stealing abilities of other classes, maybe instead of making a bunch of race-specific feats, we should have made a bunch of class-specific feats.
Class-specific feats, welcome to 3.5 edition or whatever. What I would argue is, if I can steal the most interesting thing of your class in a single feat, you should be a more interesting class. That's what I would argue. Is that they should just make sorcerers better.
I mean, they should.
Sorcerers
also
could just
do
use
that,
a bit of. We'll talk about that later with the ranger. Where it's like, if I can take your entire class in a feat, why are you a class?
It's a big mess.
And not a feat. Then, like, there are some obviously differences, but yeah, if the only interesting thing to do and to take from the sorcerer is this and can be summarized in such a simple feat, is it really worth being an entire class then? If it's not, I don't think we need to make the feat worse. We should make the class more interesting and more diverse and complex. A little bit, at least. All right, the next one, Piercer, the sequel to Bludgeoner. Or Crusher, whatever it was. You have achieved a penetrating precision in combat, granting you the following benefits. Increase your strength or dexterity by 1 to a maximum of 20. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals piercing damage, you can re-roll one of the attack's damage dice, and you must use the new roll. When you score a critical hit that deals piercing damage to a creature, you can roll 1 additional damage die when determining the extra piercing damage the target takes. So your crits on piercing damage are a little better. They get 1 die better. Mm-hmm. And you can re-roll your piercing damage if you roll a 1. The only time you'd ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, you do marginally extra damage.
Honestly, much less interesting than the Crusher one.
Not
which was all about, like, knocking dudes around.
Yeah.
When I first read this, I thought, oh, this would be great for, like, the Assassin Rogue, and then I realized, oh no, this actually wouldn't be great for the Assassin Rogue, because rolling 1 extra dice is meaningless to someone who's rolling, like, 6 dice when they crit, you know?
Uh-huh. And it only modifies the piercing damage dice, not the sneak attack dice.
Well, I think technically...
So your piercing damage is a d4.
I think technically the sneak attack is whatever weapon damage... It's like the sneak attack is the damage type of the weapon, so you can augment your sneak attack if you're using piercing.
Interesting.
It almost feels like you couldn't... Like, with the Crusher one, they thought about, well, like, what's the flavorful, interesting thing about bludgeoning damage is that you could, like, move them.
Yeah, you're knocking them around.
And then it almost feels like they didn't think of something with piercing damage.
Deal more damage.
The only thing I could think of is piercing damage is, like, you're piercing through armor. So, like, a crit on somebody would, like, lower somebody's armor class. Like, that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
But then that enters into the danger zone of 3.5 of everyone has so many modifiers, no one can keep track of everything.
Yeah. I was thinking about that, like, ignoring an amount of armor class, or, I don't know, skewering dudes. Like, if someone is if there's enemies within 5 feet of each other, can I skewer them both on my spear?
I mean, there are currently abilities, like, that let you damage people next to the people you're currently damaging. You can flavor that as, I stabbed all the way through them. I think there might be maybe, when you're talking about, like, getting through armor, I don't want to have to do lots of math.
Right.
Maybe there's, like, once per turn or once per short rest or whatever, I don't know. When you deal a critical hit with piercing damage, you can get a critical hit on a 19 and a 20 with piercing damage or something like that.
Yeah, it's maybe something
with a weapon that deals piercing damage. Where it's like, you're more precise, you crit more frequently because you're so accurate.
But I think part of the reason why that's not what's being implemented is because they want any and everyone who can use piercing damage to want to utilize this, and having that be the only real benefit locks, like, it's a non-bow with the champion fighter because that's an ability they already have, so why would they take a feat for that kind of a thing?
The other thing that I can think of immediately of what feels flavorful for piercing damage is, like, bleed effects in video games. Like, when certain kind of weapons do bleed damage, but that is, again, like, a lot of math to keep track of in D&D.
And probably to balance it would have ended up being an extra die of whatever weapon damage you were dealing anyways.
Which is what it already
essentially
is.
how it works.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think there's, like, it's so frustrating because I feel like this is a puzzle. Like, this is a Rubik's Cube. Mm-hmm. There's an answer to this. There's a cool version of this piercer feat.
We're so tantalizingly close to it.
Yeah, and they're thinking of it. We're getting it, but we can't quite get there. We could maybe think on it some more and come back another time. The Poisoner feat. You can prepare and deliver deadly poisons, gaining the following benefits. When you make a damage roll, you ignore resistance to poison damage.
Oof.
You thought you were resistant to poison damage? You
Not
weren't.
this poison.
You can coat a weapon in poison as a bonus action instead of as an action.
Neat.
Okay.
You gain proficiency with the Poisoner's Kit if you don't already have it. With 1 hour of work using a Poisoner's Kit and expending 50 GP worth of materials, you can create a number of doses of potent poison equal to your proficiency bonus. Once applied, the poison retains potency for 1 minute or until you hit with the weapon. When a weapon coated in this poison deals damage to a creature, that creature must succeed on a DC 14 Constitution saving throw or take 2d8 poison damage and become poisoned until the end of your next turn. Poison being a condition and a damage type in D&D is not confusing at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now this one kind of runs into a weird spot that we don't really have with the chef, because the chef's ability, like, lets you do, like, kind of weird and interesting thing with food. Because as far as food is concerned, in the normal vanilla rules of the player's handbook, it's just something that keeps you alive and stops you from taking exhaustion points. With Poisoner, though, like except for you can ignore someone's racial features of resistance to poison, and you can now poison things more quickly. That last one, isn't that something I could have already done with the Poisoner's Kit? Like,
I think that
don't you know how to make a poison with the Poisoner's Kit? Like it's nice that it gives you like poison. Basically a random like default poison. But especially if you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide with a whole bunch of different poisons that you have available to you, this one feels like it's just kind of like holding your hand and saying like, this is what a Poisoner's Kit is for, even though that's what you should have already been doing and or saying. You know what I mean?
The D&D poison.
I mean, it's like this is just giving you a free poison recipe, kind of a thing that does cost money and supplies and stuff, but it's like, but that's already what poisons were.
Yeah. And in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, where we finally learned what was in the kits we got.
Yep.
The Poisoner's Kit was said to be a favored resource for thieves, assassins, and others who engage in skullduggery. It allows you to apply poisons and create them from various materials. Your knowledge of poisons helps you treat them. The components were glass vials, a mortar and pestle, chemicals, and a glass stirring rod. You get a benefit to your history checks regarding famous poisons and poisonings. Investigation perception. Your knowledge of poisons has taught you to handle these substances carefully, giving you an edge when you inspect poison objects or try to extract clues from events that involve poison. Medicine. When you treat a victim of poison, your knowledge grants you added insight into how to provide the best care to your patient. Mm-hmm. Nature survival. Working with poisons enables you to acquire lore about plants and animals that are poisonous. And handle poison. Your proficiency allows you to handle and apply a poison without risk of exposing yourself to its effects. Apparently nothing in the Poisoner's Tool lets you make poison.
I feel like
what hogwash is that?
The Poisoner's Kit also doesn't make that much useful sense, because saying things like, it allows you to handle and apply poison without risk of exposing yourself.
That's skill in poisoning, not the Poisoner's Kit.
Well, but when in normal D&D does it say that if you poison a weapon, you risk yourself... Like, you have to roll to see if you get poisoned.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? Like, was that all a risk
This
before?
is a solution to something that wasn't a problem until the solution came.
Yeah. Because they had to think of something to use it for, but they were like, well, I mean, you couldn't possibly make poison.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
I don't know, man. It's like the herbalism kit, and it's like, can I make health potions with this? Great question. There's no like, oh
Can
boy.
they? Do they need alchemy, or do they need both, or do they need all three of these in order to make
really
anything?
Crafting rules in D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Practiced expert feat. You have honed your proficiency with particular skills or tools, gaining the following benefits. Increase an ability score of your choice by 1 to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency with one skill or tool of your choice. Choose one of your skill or tool proficiencies. Your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make that uses the chosen proficiency.
This is already a feat. The
Prodigy
it's
feat?
literally already a feat, except this doesn't have the racial limitations.
Oh, is that what's the
Prodigy
racial
feat only works for
yeah.
humans and or things that are half human, so half elves and half orcs. But this is literally just already a feat. They just got rid of one of its limitations.
But now I can take Prodigy and Practice Expert.
You could already just take Prodigy again.
Can you retake feats multiple times?
Actually, no. That you might actually have a point. You can't take the only feats you can take multiple times are the ones that say that you can.
You can. That you can. If you take it again, you get a bonus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. There's that to consider. So now I can be a bard with Jack of all trades who is a prodigy and a practice expert, and I can have every skill in the game.
And never get a single ability score increase.
Never once. Yeah. Yeah, it's not that great. I guess. It lets you, like...
I mean, this is nice because it gives people access to expertise, which is double proficiency.
Yeah, it lets people get expertise who aren't a rogue or a bard, which is cool. That's kind of fun. And technically, it even lets you do it with things that you... Because it's just a skill or tool of your choice. So of any of the skills or tools that you could choose Thieves' Tools, which normally is very limited to being only...
Only thieves or people with the criminal background.
Yeah. And so, like, it's not without merit. It's also not very interesting. It's okay. Yeah. Shadow Touched. Remember the Faerie Touched from earlier? Shadow Touched. You learn how to bend shadows from your experience with the Shadowfell. You gain the following benefits. Increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1, maximum of 20. You learn the Darkness spell and 1 first-level spell of your choice. And then it's the exact same as the Faerie Touched, where...
Right.
Except it's for illusion or necromancy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, you can cast them with your other slots, but you can also cast them once for free. Yeah. Shadowfell Touched. It's very similar to Fae. I don't have anything else interesting to say than what we already said about the Fae Touched one. Gives you darkness. I do worry sometimes that Wizards gives darkness out too much.
Literally
it's
dark.
Really
like everyone has. Every single person has access to darkness.
Yeah. Everyone
Tieflings
can cast
are
darkness.
born casting darkness.
Yeah. Like literally. Yeah. Yeah. It just happens a lot.
Well, they have to because they gave everyone dark vision. So
they have to nerf the dark vision.
So dark vision is the only way to counter it. Darkness is the only way to counter dark vision.
Darkness is the only way to
counter. And they gave it to everyone.
That's true.
They did oops all dark vision.
They were like, oh dang, we gave everyone dark vision. We have to make a way to give them something that's so dark that dark vision doesn't work.
You could just take away all the dark vision.
Whatever, it's fine. Shield training. You've trained in the effective use of shields. You gain the following benefits. Increase your strength, dexterity, or constitution score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency with shields. In combat, you can don or doff a shield as the free object interaction on your turn.
Oops.
Nice. Okay. If you have the spellcasting or pact magic feature, you can use a shield as a spellcasting focus.
Fun.
That's kind of fun. That's cool.
Thanks. Yeah. This is pointless.
Yeah. I don't get a cool Captain America shield throw? No.
You don't even get a bash or anything?
No.
You'd really think there'd at least be a bash.
Yeah, so you go through months of training, hard-earned School of Nox, and what you learn to do is you can pick up your shield or drop it faster.
That's so silly. The thing that immediately comes to my mind would be some sort of benefit that, like, I mean, I don't know if this is actually a good idea or not, but just like the first thing that pops into my head is that if someone makes a melee attack against you and it fails, like you block it, that they are pushed 5 feet away from you.
Goodness.
Or
just designing an entirely new feat. Okay.
Or like take a little bit.
But that's the thing is like this one doesn't matter.
Anything interesting?
Yeah,
sure. Question: can I say that I doffed my shield as a free object interaction when I threw it across the battlefield at my enemy? So that I get a free attack as a free object interaction.
Sneaky.
DM question. Is that doffing? Define doffing.
Define doffing.
Slasher.
Now when the Winter Soldier catches it in his one robot hand, is that donning the shield now?
Yes, he is donning it. That is true. Yes, and he has the pact magic feature.
Oh no.
He's going to cast Eldritch Blast. Slasher, the double sequel to Crusher and Piercer. You've learned where to cut to have the greatest results. I love the flavor text on all these.
That's a very silly sentence.
The basically meaningless flavor text.
You cut good.
All of the other fighters are like, I just don't know where. And you're like, guys, I figured out if you cut the throat, they die way faster.
Guys, I figured out if you cut their body.
It's the forbidden knowledge that no one else knows in D&D. The reason there's no aiming function in D&D is because in the Forgotten Realms, nobody knows.
You have to take a
They didn't realize.
To learn how to cut.
You can just attack different parts of the body.
I do. It's sort of the Pokemon problem. Like, you have to teach Scyther the cut TM. It's like, I think he knew. His arms are size. I think he knew how to cut. All right, increase your strength or dexterity by 1 to a maximum of 20. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals slashing damage, you can reduce the speed of the target by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. Cool and interesting. When you score a critical hit that deals slashing damage to a creature, you grievously wound it. General Kenobi! Until the start of your next turn, the target has disadvantage on all attack rolls.
This is so much better than the Piercer one.
This and the Crusher one are actually good. The Piercer one really falls behind for me. But then again, I'm not like a damage mad fiend, you know? Like, some people are going to be like, whoa, I can reroll piercing damage to always get max damage?
Yeah.
Nice. And that's just not my jam nearly.
I think the flavor of this one works really well with it affecting movement.
Because you're like cutting down their legs and kind of a thing, or knocking, or slicing their arms so they can't be as efficient.
It's so flavorful. It's like you've cut them and they're wounded, so they're like not as strong because they're bleeding out or whatever. But we don't have to build a new bleeding mechanic.
You cut their dominant arm, and now they're using their left hand. Yeah.
Or you cut them across the face so they can't see as well on their next attack. It's like it's cool. It really feels fit to the flavor of slashing as well as being simple to understand. I do think that when we talked about piercing, I guess we didn't mention that piercing does technically work on, I mean, all of these do, but there's not really a lot of ranged slashing or bludgeoning weapons. But ranged attacks for piercer. So you can, I know, Onog, you've before built some rolls that are the elven accuracy stacked with a bunch of other things to get that single bow and arrow shot that deals the most possible damage.
Just cracks it down on them.
This technically would help with that. It's just you take one of the ones you rolled, and you get to re-roll it. Sweet. Or if you criticaled, you get one additional.
It's so funny watching you play that build and just rolling an entire jar of dice and then re-rolling all of them 12 times.
Yeah, being like, I don't like the twos. I like to roll odd numbers. Yeah, so there is technically some use cases for where if you're going to go for that. But that's the thing, though, is like, but it's just not as compelling.
In that build, like that build, that build I have for that assassin ranger character is already very feat heavy. It requires it requires elven accuracy. It requires sharpshooter to do all that damage. Piercer isn't even like 8th on the list of feats that I need to take for that build. Because fair. it adds such marginal ranges of damage, where it's just it doesn't help me control anything. It doesn't help me. It helps me do more damage because it's an assassin build, so he'll do an extra d6 of dice with their sneak attack, or one extra d8 because it's a longbow. But like that's not worth a feat. That isn't worth a feat. Sometimes doing an extra bit of dice is never worth a feat.
Definitely. All right, we got 2 left, and both of these ones are the ones most people have been not complaining about, but have been discussing, I suppose, in the community as do these step on the toes of other subclasses or classes entirely. Tandem Tactician. Your presence in a scrap tends to elevate your comrades. You gain the following benefits. You can use the help action as a bonus action. When you use the help action to aid an ally in attacking a creature, increase the range of the help action by 10 feet. Additionally, you can help 2 allies targeting the same creature within range when you use the help action this way.
Sounds familiar.
Is this the entire Mastermind subclass?
Little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it isn't the whole thing. Because it does...
Different.
It is there, and if you're a mastermind, as we talked about earlier, this does give you benefits. It doesn't just say bonus action. It says increases it by 10 feet. So yours already has a range of 30 feet, I think, as a...
Okay,
so
yeah, so it doesn't say to 10 feet or whatever.
But it's only if you're helping someone attack.
Yeah, only if you're helping someone attack. And you get this, like, you can help 2 people at once if you do... the range.
Can the masterminds not do that?
I don't believe so.
No, yeah, which is like new and unprecedented, I believe.
Yeah, it is really interesting. Ability affecting 2 creatures at the same time.
But at the same time, this really isn't that much better.
It's not.
I guess. I don't know. Maybe a mastermind would want this just because they want to double down on their own feature. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole reason Bean has picked being a mastermind rogue in the past, is because they wanted that feature to help people. And now that...
You just take this feat.
Just take this feat, yeah.
On any class they play forever, and they can just have that ability. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I like that it separates it out from that subclass, and it's like, you know what, honestly... that is a thing a lot of people want to do, and they don't want to have to spend 3 levels in rogue or 2 levels in rogue or however many it is to subclass in rogue.
It is interesting to look at when an ability makes you feel like it's stepping on another class's toes and when it doesn't, because anything that just makes you very efficient at dealing damage, you don't go, wow, really stealing the champion fighter's whole thing.
That's true.
And it's interesting, and I'm not saying that that's incorrect. I just think it's interesting to note that some of the classes feel more like, but the reason you chose this wasn't efficiency, it was the vibe.
Yeah.
So then when you give that away,
the vibe out
when you give the vibe.
Yeah, because I think when you take a class that isn't like for maximum damage dealing numerical efficiency, like, it's because you wanted to take ownership of that feeling. So then if the rest of your party can also all do that, it feels like a waste of time.
If there was a feat that was like battle focus feat and it gave you the rage ability from the barbarian, just as any class,
I'd
would
be
be
very
like,
angry about that.
Yeah, that would be like, wow, what am I anymore? You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's not to say that barbarian needs to be better. It's like, that is so intrinsic to a barbarian and is already very good.
Imagine if there were feats that let you, like, learn spells, like, extra spells outside of your normal spell list, even though that's, like, literally the only interesting thing about, like, the wizard classes and subclasses. Give wizards interesting attributes.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, they're already too powerful.
They are
Use
too
it
powerful.
on sorcerers.
I know.
Yeah.
Nerf them and make them interesting. I say this as a wizard.
All right, the final one of the document.
The
entire ranger class.
It really is.
You have spent time hunting creatures and honed your skills, gaining the following benefits. This is the tracker
How much time have I spent hunting creatures? Like an
20
evening?
minutes. Yeah. Increase your wisdom score by 1 to a maximum of 20.
Thanks.
You learn the Hunter's Mark spell. You can cast it once without expending a spell slot, and you must finish a long rest before you can cast it in this way again. You can also cast the spell using any spell slots you have. Wisdom is your spellcasting ability for this spell. You have advantage on wisdom survival checks to track creatures.
What?
It's the
Come
entire
on.
ranger
No,
class.
Just
that
make
isn't
the ranger good.
Guys, that isn't the entire ranger class. It's better.
It's literally
because you have you have advantage on wisdom survival checks to track creatures. Always, irrelevant of your favorite enemy or what location you're in.
Yeah, it's not the whole ranger class. It doesn't say you're useless unless you're in snow.
And you can cast Hunter's Mark for free, which you can't do as a ranger.
This is better than being 3 class levels of ranger.
But this doesn't give me a wolf that takes my entire turn to use.
That doesn't do
that?
as much damage as you do. And
Here's the
dies
thing,
faster.
There has been so much work done on the rangers in Unearthed Arcana and in homebrew stuff where it's like you can play a ranger that is good.
Yeah, you can find
now.
rangers.
Yeah.
Like I think my
It's all
ranger
about
character
them
I'm
deep
playing right now
stalkers,
is
baby.
pretty decent. But it's like I wish they would just use that and just like leave it alone. You know, like this I hate this feat.
Yeah.
Because it almost to me feels like they just bailed on rangers and they were like, here, you could just do the thing you wanted them for.
Reading this feat literally put the idea in my head. It's like, are they going to release like a player's handbook that just doesn't have rangers in it?
Yeah, and like I feel like that's sad because I literally feel like it isn't hard to fix. They just won't do it. Like it's not even that hard to fix.
I've seen a lot of people say that if you take Scout Rogue and this feat, you're a better ranger than
just
any
a better
ranger you
ranger.
can build in the game. Yeah.
Man.
Which is something. That's something, you know?
Yeah, I feel a type of way about that.
I feel a certain kind of way.
I'm not crazy about it.
That's the thing. Like we said earlier, if everything interesting about your entire class can be put into like one very minor ability that doesn't even make another class that good.
Guys, I wrote a feat where you get Druidcraft and you can transform into animals as a bonus action.
Okay. But that's the thing is like the whole thing is that I understand classes have emblematic like features that if you were to give them away would make you'd be stepping on class. The difference is in often those are so powerful you obviously can't give them away. Whereas these, even giving them away, they're still not that good.
Yeah, like the sorcerer and the ranger.
Yeah, the sorcerer and the ranger, like, they don't suddenly make me as a fighter so good.
The fact that the entire class is not too powerful to be a feat.
That's what I'm saying. That's the problem. Not that it has one feature, because it's like, yeah, I can give rage away or I can give shapeshifting away, and it would feel like I stole the whole class as a feat. But that's also a ridiculous feat that's way too powerful.
This really makes me want to write a list of, like, of feats that are just the worst part of a class without the parts that make it balanced. Like, I write a warlock feat that just means you only know 3 spells now. And that's the only thing it changes.
You only have 2 spell slots, regardless of the amount you used
You're
to
a
have.
wizard, but now you only have 2 spells.
Good luck.
Oh, man. That's very good. That's very good. All right. Any final thoughts on any of these feats or on feats in general and the design space for them in D&D? Question to the room.
In all honesty, like, a lot of these are very cool, very flavorful, very interesting, and like, even like I'm thinking about taking some of these for, you know, some alternate builds of, you know, a barbarian I'm looking at. And these are some very cool ideas. A lot of them, actually, it's not that the feats themselves are bad, like we just talked about. It's just that they showcase weaknesses in other classes that have just been allowed to linger so long unaddressed.
I agree. So you're building a chef barbarian, is what you're saying.
Well,
I would love that.
I'm building a chef warforged barbarian. He knows not the taste of food, but he is doomed to guide others to a gift he cannot partake.
But he has a blender in his stomach.
But he is made out of cooking utensils.
That's so funny.
No, I'm gonna make a lizard folk barbarian chef, and you can't ask him where he gets the food.
If you are a humanoid creature and you eat his food, you do have to roll to see if you go insane.
Yeah.
If you start getting the shakes, quote unquote.
Yeah.
If you become a Wendigo. Yeah. People in town have gone missing. The new local chef is a lizard folk.
The new pie maker.
Put it together yourself.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's so good. I'll make a lizard folk bard who's like, yeah, I used to cut hair, but I have the chef.
But now I'm a
feat.
chef.
But now I'm a chef. Anyway, very good. All right, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this discussion of Unearthed Arcana 2020 feats, let us know your thoughts below. Remember to like the video and subscribe for future Dungeons and Dragons Unearthed Arcana discussion content. If you have a homebrew you'd like us to talk about on our regular episodes, send it to us at our email, thecopperfoxinn@gmail.com, or on social media @thecopperfoxinn.
Nobody even died.
Well, I haven't seen Bean in a while, actually.
Nobody even died. Yeah, haven't seen Bean in a while. Unrelatedly, I did take the chef feat, and I've made you guys special food. Unrelated to Bean's disappearance.
It's a bean quesadilla.
Oh, a bean burrito. All right. Nobody even died. Keep on adventuring. Bye.